Hello, hello. I do believe we are live. So I am back again Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Wonderful time to get together. Please let me know when you're here. You'll see me looking over to the other screen every once in a while. But let me know when you're here so that I can say hello. I look forward to spending my Wednesday evening with you guys. So welcome to Insights with Ivanna. This is a weekly broadcast designed to help you identify, embrace, and live more fully in your genius by illuminating important pieces of information that you actually already possess. Hello, hello, Jody. Thank you for joining us again tonight. I appreciate so much you being here and interacting like you do in these broadcasts. And I know the people that watch it on the replay appreciate it as well. So tonight is our second week of our new 12-week series exploring pathways to positivity. I am Ivanna, the founder and chief luminary officer of Luminary Insights, an intuitive life coaching brand. So as we discussed last week, I can actually help you build psychological strength, good mental habits, social connections, and physical health in just 12 weeks. And I bet that's why you came back. So together we're going to take the steps to move down the pathway of positivity. Applying what we discuss can work miracles in your life. It definitely has in mine. If you saw the picture for tonight's episode, you'll see a marker on the first step of that stone path in the picture as we are going down that pathway to positivity. So before we jump into tonight's material, I wonder about your practice from last week. So I'm going to put in the chat the link to the Google Doc that we were working on last week, where we had the opportunity to list some things that we don't like and that we want related to those 4 topics that I was just talking about: psychological strengths, mental habits, social connections, and physical health. So I ask you if you were willing, and some of you put Y in the chat box to say you were willing to take that chart to list some things you don't like that you're dealing with in your life on those topics and some things that you do want. So for me, the very first one, psychological strengths, building those strengths. One of the things I don't like is negative self-talk. And it comes up a lot, especially when I'm stressed and I'm trying to get a lot of things done because I'm a multitasker, and I get this negative self-talk like there's never enough time in the day, or I'll just never get it all done. And what I really want is just a belief in the best, that I'm doing the best I can, I'm accomplishing things piece by piece. So I'm curious to know, type in the chat box if you tried it, and if you did, what happened. So for me, even before I got in bed, last Wednesday night, I had that negative self-talk, like, oh my gosh, I just can't get it all done. There's too much to do. And so I just stopped and I said, just delete that. And I decided that, okay, I'm going to do what I'm asking other people to do. I did ask you to just kind of notice for the first few days, but since I've been doing it for a while, I went ahead and just jumped in with the next step of countering that negative with 3 positives, because we talked about that 3-to-1 ratio last week. Yeah, Jody, I think all of us struggle with negative self-talk. Sometimes we just don't realize we're doing it. So for me, when I got into this, oh my gosh, I just can't get it all done, I was like, nope, cancel it, stop it. And I said, all right, what are 3 things that I can do to flip this, to look at the positive side? And I said, you know what? I got some really important parts of my project done today. I was really proud of myself for doing that. And then I actually spent time with my husband in the morning and in the evening. And so that's really good, because sometimes I get in work mode and I've got to make sure that those relationships are being taken care of. And then I was like, you know what? I also took care of myself. I took a walk. I got up from my desk. So those were 3 things that were part of getting things done that day that I used to counter that negative self-talk. And so first you got to realize you're even doing it, and then figure out what is it that you really want, and how can you move toward what you want by flipping that idea into the positive things. Yeah, Jody, so you're working on changing it. Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you. Yeah, I was very proud of myself for those accomplishments. And you know what? Most of the time when I'm having that negative self-talk, I have had other accomplishments. I'm just focusing on what didn't get done instead of looking at what did get done. So again, if you're here, say hello and let me know that you are here. Also, if you've got something you want to share in the chat box about how you're working on changing it using that chart. Again, the link is in the chat box for that Google Doc. That Google Doc is something you can come back to over and over and over again during these 12 weeks, because what we're working on is building our psychological strengths, our good mental habits, our social connections, and our physical health. You can pick one of those or you can pick all four, but by doing these things and taking the steps down this pathway to positivity, you will have positive changes in your life. So I'm going to pause for 1 second and see if you have anything to add. So anyway, I mentioned the book Positivity by Dr. Fredrickson last week. I have found so many interesting things in this, and I know some of you on here have read the book or have taken her class as well. And what I love is that it's coming from a neuroscience point of view. So one of the reviews that I read said, oh, this is scientific. It's not like the positive, manifestation type of positivity. And I disagree. I think they're two sides of the same coin. So, many of the mentors that I have, like Jack Canfield, we're talking about, do it, believe it, visualize it, it works. But what this does is it says, here's why it works and here's how it works, because it's changing your brain. And so that's perfect for me, for the way that my brain works, because I'm like, name your source. I need the citation. I need to understand from the logical and the research perspective why these things that work. So here's a chance for you guys to type some things in the chat box. One of the interesting points that Dr. Fredrickson makes is that through her research, she has found there are 10 positive emotions. I don't know about you, but I've not thought about it that way before, or very deeply. 10 positive emotions. So take a second and type in the chat box what you think some of those 10 positive emotions might be. And if you were part of my earlier broadcasts, then you might even know some of them, because we talked about some of them already. There's also several I never would have thought of. So type in the chat box, what are some positive emotions that you think she might have included in her research? And even though I took the class, if I didn't look at it again, I can tell you there's a couple of these I wouldn't have thought of. So let's see what you get. So if you're here, please say hello so that I know you're here. Almost every week I get a text message or an email from somebody who says, I was there. Did you not see me? Did you not know I was here? Sometimes there's a delay in the system, and sometimes it just doesn't show up. But I can see often how many viewers it says there are, but I don't know that you're here unless you type something in the chat box and it pops up for me. So, okay, Jody has typed a couple of us. Joy, definitely. Ding, ding, ding. That's one of them. Love, yes, that is definitely one of them. Accomplishment, she doesn't list that by name, but there's some other things that might kind of fit into that. But that's a great thing to think about. That is a very positive thing for us when we have accomplishments. So I am going to tell you that she does list 10 of them, and she lists them in the order of frequency. We'll see how good my skills are with cut and paste. So I think I just put in the chat box the 10, although I'm not seeing it. Jody says hope. Yes, absolutely. Hope. There you go. There's my list. So there are the 10 that she lists in her research. The very first one being joy. So today I have on my joy sweater. That's one of the ways it helps me remember that I need to focus on the joy. Then it's gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, and love. And I can tell you there's a couple of those I wouldn't have thought of, especially awe. But we'll get to that one in a few weeks. So for me, it's really exciting to see that the first on her list is joy. Because you may remember that in my earlier series, 10 Ways to Illuminate Your Insights, my very first one was joy. And that was my list of 10 things that I did throughout my life and during the process of becoming the golden version of myself, which I talk about in Women Who Shine. I pulled that from the chapter. I went back through my chapter and I said, what were the things that I did to really become that golden version of myself and shine? And so my very first step was find your joy. So I was pretty excited when I saw her research and saw that joy was the very first thing she listed. All right, so here's a question for you. How long does frustration, anger, upset, how long do those things last? In your mind, in your body, how long does frustration, anger, upset, fear, how long do those kind of negative things last? Type in the chat box for me. Do they last a second, a minute, your whole lifetime? I know some of you liked it when I had the polls where you had choices to pick from instead of trying to think of something out of the blue. Again, I quit doing the polls because it was actually kicking people out of the system. Aw, my husband's on, and he said, you are my joy. Thank you, sweetheart. You are my joy as well. Ooh, Jody, that's a deep answer. How long does frustration, anger, upset, fear, how long does it last? Jody said, as long as we allow them to. Yeah, sometimes that's forever. So here's the next question. How long does joy last? How long does joy last? Let's see what you say. And I'm sure David could tell you he may be filled with joy by me in one moment, but he might not be the next. Well, we come back to that foundation. So how long does joy last? Is it a second, a minute? Does it just linger and stay for a long, long time? How long does joy typically last? I know I've got a delay, so I'm waiting for see if we get any answers. Well, I'm going to go ahead and answer it for you, that based on the research, joy is fleeting. It just happens in an instance, and then it kind of fades away. Like we want to hold on to it. We've got that perfect moment or that perfect feeling. It seems so amazing, but it's so hard to hold on to. And so just like we talked about last week, negative emotions seem to be stronger than positive emotions. And according to the research, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio. So I know for me, it's easier to think about something that didn't go right than it is to think about the positives. So if you think back to that previous joy broadcast, if you were there, we explored how to build your joy muscle. It's like an exercise, right? We're going to build our joy muscle so that we can choose joy even when we're in the midst of something traumatic. And I shared in that broadcast, if you want to go back and look at it, I shared about my divorce and also about when I had a stroke, and how because I had built that joy muscle, I had purposefully built my own joy list that I could refer back to help me relive those joy moments. We even did a meditation during that broadcast where we experienced a joy moment to help us get that feeling in our bodies, in our minds, to think about it, smell it, touch it, feel it, so that we could go back to that at any time. So in that broadcast, we built a joy list. So I know some of you may still have that joy list. And some of the things on my joy list were walks by the pond, time with my amazing husband, time with our dogs. It was Sherlock, now it's Luna, dancing, and growing genius within others. So what are some of yours? If you already have your My Joy list, what are some things that were on it? If you don't have your list, what is something that brings you joy? Please type it in the chat box. So yeah, Jody said, there's a saying, joy is fleeting. True. And we're looking to hold on to it longer. And that's what this broadcast is all about. Finding your joy, thinking of your joy, walking in your joy, using that joy to build your joy muscle so that you become more resilient. Hi, Zat Lee. Thank you for joining us. We are talking about joy. I even wore my little joy sweater tonight. But we're talking about joy. And in a previous broadcast, we built a joy list for us to go back to help us remember. So I'm asking, what are some things that bring you joy? Type them in the chat box. Aw, Zatley's cute little Bitmoji brings me joy. That is so sweet. And it is your personality all the way. All right, Jody typed that time with friends, photography, art, Legos, writing are some of the things that bring her joy. Oh, and definitely listening to music. Okay. Some of the things that bring Jody joy. Absolutely. Exactly says, when I have the opportunity to help an educator shine. So that is when you are in your genius, you are in your flow, helping someone shine. And that is definitely a way that we bring joy. So once you have that list, I'm glad you like my sweater. Once you have that list, you can consciously choose to go back to the things on your list. So in the earlier broadcast, we did a meditation where we thought about something that brings us joy. We went into that feeling. We felt it. We breathed deeply. We smiled. We thought about what we could touch, what we could hear, what we could feel, so that we can then bring that back at any time. So not only can you make that list, but you can always choose to do more of what's on your list. So those of you who know me know that I like to have an outline for what I'm going to talk about. I don't want to just talk off the cuff. I want to make sure I hit my key points. Well, today, during my lunch hour, I wanted to polish my script for tonight. But we had good weather, and the weather has been so bad lately, and we're expecting bad weather again tomorrow, that I thought, Luna really needs to get out for a walk, and I really need to see the sunshine myself. So I decided to go for my joy, and we went out and took a long walk. And we had such a fun time in the fresh air. We ran into a neighbor we haven't seen in a long time. We met a new neighbor that we'd never met before. I got my heart rate up, and I just felt invigorated. I was in my joy. And although I wanted to be sitting at my desk doing some things I needed to do, I knew that the joy would help me when I got back, that I'd have a more clear head, I'd be more creative, I'd be more alive, and I'd be able to get things done faster and better. Have you guys ever experienced that? I know sometimes back in the days when we were in the office, it would be like, oh, things are stressful, let's go take a walk. We want that fresh air. We want to bring that joy into our lives. And we want to clear our heads so that we can be more creative. So I was really surprised as I was reading the book on positivity to hear that there's actually a name for that. It's actually in the research. My husband wants to know if I'm muted. Can you guys not hear me? I'm not muted. And if anybody else cannot hear me, please let me know. I'm going to keep going. Walking is a great outlet. Okay, somebody's hearing me. Fantastic. So there's actually a name in neuroscience, in positive psychology, that is called broaden and build. And that is all about positivity, where when we have more positivity, more joy in our lives, it makes us more creative. We are broadening the way we see the world. We're more creative, we're more open-minded, we're more kind, and we're overall a better person, because it actually changes the way our brain works, which I just find phenomenal. That being more positive, living in more joy, rewires our brains. And so we broaden, we can see more, we can be more creative, but then we build. So we said joy's fleeting, but guess what? The more joy you have, the more positivity you have, you build your resources and you become more resilient. And that ties into exactly the 4 things we're talking about: the psychological strengths, the good mental habits, the social connections, and the physical health. It ties into all of that. And if you've read Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages, it also ties into that whole idea of filling your love tank. You're building those reserves. And if you don't continue to do the positive, the reserves go down. The negatives start to wear them out. But the positives can actually overwrite those negatives and build on top of those negatives. So I don't know about you, but that gets me excited. And look, there's some joy. We've got some great conversations going on in the chat box. My husband asked if I was muted, and Zatley said, don't you wish? Absolutely. There are a lot of people that would like to mute me sometimes. So thinking about the fact that your negatives can actually be overwritten by your positives. And if you go back to that spreadsheet, that document that I shared, I'll put it in the chat again. We have those 4 topics that we can make dramatic changes in our lives. We can strengthen ourselves psychologically, have better mental habits, better social connections, and physical health. So go back to that chart and think about joy. How can you take the concept of joy and apply it to that? So I'm going to stick to the negative self-talk that I was talking about earlier. So as I build my joy muscle, I actually find it easier to shift from my negatives into the positives. And part of that is I realize that they're there. And so I'm like, oh, okay, today I was feeling fatigued. I was feeling a little stressed. And I'm like, what's going to bring me joy? Boom, walk with Luna. Get out in the sun. I was able to think of that, where in the past I might have just said, oh, go eat a cookie. You'll feel better if you eat a cookie. So I hope I really haven't been too scattered tonight, since I didn't get my outline written to the level that I had originally wanted to. And it was easy for me to go into that negative self-talk. Oh, there's never enough time. I just can't do it all. Am I trying to do too much? But stop. It's like, nope, I can broaden and I can build my experiences with joy. So I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to fill my love tank. I'm going to become more resilient by choosing to do the thing that brings me joy. So I want to hear from you guys, what brings you joy, and how can you use that joy to help you with either your psychological strengths, mental habits, social connections, or physical health. Yeah, we can all talk at once. That's the problem with this. I can't hear you guys talk. I think I might start doing a combination of Zoom and Facebook, where people who ask to be on the Zoom can be on the Zoom and maybe talk, and then it would be on Facebook as well. Yes, negative self-talk is a trap. Tell me more about that. Sounds like there's a bear in your trap with your grrr. Tell me more about the trap of negative self-talk. And anyone else who's here, please, please, please say hello. I keep getting a pop-up about my frame rate not being enough, and I'm afraid to do anything with it for fear I might blow up the whole thing right now. Oh, good. Zoom might be something we move to. So we'll see what Zatley has to say about the negative self-talk being a trap. Because just like we talked about before, the negativity will bring you down. You've got to have that 3-to-1 ratio, 3 positives to the 1 negative, to really be able to function on the side of positivity and joy. So we will see if we get any more information on the negative self-talk being a trap. But we want to stay out of the trap. And I want to encourage you this week, if you didn't begin working on the spreadsheet or the worksheet last time, think about working on it now. So you have a sample in the document of what I wrote down for each of mine, for my don't likes and my wants. Last week I asked you to write those down, your don't like and your wants, and then start just paying attention. When do you hear yourself doing negative self-talk, if that's one of the things you picked? For social connections, when do I feel myself trying to be in charge when it's really not my place to be in charge, and I really just want to relax and enjoy? Being aware of it first, and then figuring out what I want and how to get there. So for me, if I'm trying to be in charge when it's not my place, joy. What can I do for joy? I can just sit back and enjoy what's happening around me instead of feeling like I need to do something with it. So let's see. Zatley says, it's so easy to fall in the traps when things are not going as expected. Absolutely. We have ideas of how we think things should work, and when they don't, uh-oh. So think about it, Zatley. You might not have an answer yet, but think about it. If you get into negative self-talk when something doesn't go the way you had planned it to, what is it you really want? You might want it to go the way you planned it to, but it might not. You want to adjust to what's happening. So what can you flip it to in the positive? Like, it didn't do what I wanted to. I worked so hard, it didn't go where I wanted to. What can you find in it that's positive? So I know for me, sometimes when they don't go the way I wanted them to, it's like, oh, there are other ways to do things. I might learn something from this. I might learn a new skill from this. I might get to practice my patience with this. I might have the opportunity to step back, and going back to mine about needing to be in charge, I might have the opportunity to step back and really watch someone else do a great job and come into their own. So there are ways that we can flip it. Zatley says, I call Ivanna and scream. Yes, we do that too. We do that too. Or complain, Jody said. And if you go back to the Jack Canfield work, take 100% responsibility. No complaining, no blaming, no excuses. And so, yeah, it feels good to complain for a minute. And even when I do that, I still have to stop and try to go back and say, nope, erase that. Let's find something different that's positive that we can do with it. And you know, I don't get it right 100% of the time. But if you've known me for a while, you know I'm doing a better job. And so I'm proud of myself for that. Yeah, sometimes grace is the answer. And that can be really, really hard to give that grace. And I try to remind myself that if I were on the other end of that, how much I would want that grace. And you know what? When we give the grace instead of being angry, guess what? We find our joy and we're less stressed. So it all works together in such an amazing way. So exactly, I don't know if you were on when I put the 10 different kinds of positivity that Dr. Fredrickson talks about in her book. I think it's going to be fascinating each week as we explore these, because some of these are pretty logical, like joy and gratitude. But then when we get down into things like amusement and awe, it's a little more interesting. So each of the next 9 weeks, we will take one of these different kinds of positivity to talk about. And then on the 10th week, which will be our 12th week overall, we'll do a wrap up. So I just want to thank you guys so much for being here, and I want to encourage you this week to give it a try. Go a little bit deeper on the positivity concept than we can do in these broadcasts. You've got to work on it some on your own. Pull out that sheet, figure out what it is you want. You can even write it out in more detail. And if you really want to go deeper, then we can go in these broadcasts. You can fill out the Let's Talk form on myluminaryinsights.com. And let me know that you want to talk more. Let's see if I can beat Jody getting it in the chat box. She's so good to get it in the box for me every week. All right, so if you're willing to give it a try, type Y in the chat box. Hi, Karen. Yes, grace is a beautiful thing. So glad you're here, Karen. So if you're willing to give it a try this week, to go a little bit deeper, looking at that worksheet and helping yourself figure out what you don't like and what you do want related to physical strengths, mental habits, social connections, and physical health. I'm telling you guys, by the end of the 12 weeks, you will see dramatic change if you take these steps down the pathway to positivity. So I just thank you so much for being here. And I do want to ask you to do me a favor, that if you're learning something, if you're enjoying this, that you'll share it with your friends. And like I said last week, even share it with your enemies, anybody who might gain something from it, so that we can walk down the pathway of positivity together. So I'm going to pause and see if you have anything you want to share. And while I'm paused, I'm going to see if I can figure out how to fix what it is they're telling me I need to fix. And no, I won't be able to do it while we're on the broadcast. All right. Any comments, any thoughts? I appreciate you guys coming so much. I do try to keep this to 30 minutes or less. And if we get enough people that are interested in attending the broadcast, I will explore the possibility of doing Zoom and Facebook at the same time. Last week I did say feel free to reach out to me via my email, and then I couldn't remember my email. It's Ivanna, IVANNA at myluminaryinsights.com. Feel free to email me as well. And I really appreciate you guys taking your time. For me, this is joy. This is so much fun. I'm learning so much by doing it. And having you guys here just makes it even more fun. And thank you to the people who watch the replays as well. Hopefully you'll join us live sometime. So I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you for coming, and have a wonderful snow day if you're in this area, because we are expecting rain and snow coming up. All right, sending lots of love and light, you guys. Good night.